You know, it's really something. The more of these startup grinds that we have, the more I am just really, really impressed and proud of Wichita. A little rain did not keep us away. As entrepreneurs, we know the show must go on. And so kudos to you all for coming out tonight to hear from a very amazing man representing an even more amazing, yet I say extraordinary company. Scott, come join me. All right, so you guys in the audience, you know the deal. Tweet questions. Here is our handle and our hashtag. That way, when the night is over, again, we can look back and see all of the great things that happened today in pictures and quotes. So how are you?
Well, I'm doing wonderful.
Very good, very good. I see people still smacking on your custard.
Well, I hope so. And thank everybody for coming out in the rain tonight.
Yeah.
I was a little worried that they wouldn't be here, but everybody's here.
It's a large crowd.
We have umbrellas in the state of Kansas. It's good.
Exactly, exactly. I did this last time. Before we kick off, let me ask who's in the room. How many of you all are entrepreneurs? Go ahead and just raise your hand. Okay. Wonderful. How many of you just have an idea? You think you might be entrepreneurial, but not quite sure? A few of you? Okay, good, good. How many of you all are service partners in the room? You help develop entrepreneurs. All right. How many of you all are here because of Freddy's and supporting Scott? Absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's get underway. There has been a trend of people who have sat across from me in Startup Grind coming from farms. Is that your case or not?
No farms.
No farms.
St. Louis kid, sorry.
St. Louis kid. Talk to us about what it was like growing up for you in St. Louis.
Well, so my family, my mom and dad, definitely entrepreneurs, owned dry cleaners. That the interesting thing, sometimes made money. That's not a good thing for entrepreneurship, by the way. We like profit every month. It's a good thing. And grew up, learning a little bit about that and understanding what it's like to make payroll. And that's a neat thing to learn when you're a little kid.
Really? What were your parents like in that as entrepreneurs? What were some of the traits you saw them display?
Absolutely hard work, understanding, being passionate about doing things the right way. And I think that's a message that has stuck with me forever. And kind of unusual because my dad was a good business person. My mom was a great business person. Really understood business in an era when women weren't allowed to be the smarter one of the two or the better, which is interesting, but she was wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to us about what it was like going to school for you. What were your interests coming up?
Well, so I started working in restaurants when I was 15 and became 15, yeah. And
how did you get in the restaurant business at 15?
So a friend of mine was going to get a job, and I went with him.
You tagged along?
Yeah, absolutely. Because
nothing better to do?
Well, at 15, I couldn't drive, and he was 16, so he could drive.
Okay.
And we went to it was a catering company, and we went in there, and I thought, this is pretty cool. And the owner, who I remained lifelong friends with, said, hey, you want a job too? And I go, well, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. I like food, so let's go for it.
And that was it. That was your interview, huh?
That was and really, we talk about different things, but that's where the passion for food service started.
What do you mean?
Well, there's a lot of industries out there. You go out and when you take care of guests in a restaurant, or this was a catering company, so you're feeding 50 up to 10,000 guests at one party, you're making people happy. How many people can do that every day, right? And that's really something that I get a charge out of that.
Wow. Yeah, catering is hard work.
It is, but it's also a little different than restaurants. With catering, you're going to feed 1,000 guests. They come in, they eat, and then you're done. You clean up, you go home. Restaurants, you get busy, you think you're done, and then a bus pulls up, and you get to do it again, which is wonderful. But understanding, and I like that challenge.
Absolutely. What were some of the main things you learned about taking care of people during your time catering?
It's really, sometimes you got to stand back and just watch your guest, and you can tell when somebody is enjoying themselves. When you go into Freddy's and you watch somebody eating a turtle sundae, I mean, come on, it's just an instant smile, or, and I can make people, talk about steak burgers, right? So let's make it, right now, no one's had dinner, so haha, and, let's take 2 steak burgers. We're going to perfectly sear them and caramelize. We're going to put melt cheese on them and mustard, onion, and pickle. And you're going to take a bite out of that, and then the steam's going to come off. We're going to have good sales later tonight. So
right. Nice product placement. So 15, you got your job. You entered into the world of catering, learned a lot of good lessons. Tell us about what college was like for you. Study.
Well, college was fun. Yeah. So I went to University of Missouri, Columbia, which is very tough when I had a daughter that went to KU. and a son-in-law sitting in the back room that went to KU. Yeah. I actually had a jacket made that had the KU and the Mizzou logo on it, and it said, "I'm so confused." And I'm over it now, I think, so we're okay. But, really, when I really determined going to college, I was one of the few people that knew what they wanted to do at that point in life. And I started in the hotel restaurant school at University of Missouri Columbia, which was in the ag school. And the interesting thing about that is that very few people started in hotel restaurant school. It usually was a lot of business majors that couldn't keep a 2.8 GPA. And then they shifted to the 2.0 ag school. So, really at that point knew it. I worked pretty much full time from sophomore year on in college. So.
All right. So that was a lot of applied learning. You were able to follow your passion into school. You were able to study. And then how did you actually get your first taste of entrepreneurship?
I think the taste, when you're young and cutting lawns, I think that works. When you see your parents going through it, that's definitely a component. And then when I graduated college, went to work for Gilbert Robinson, which is Bristol Bar and Grill, if you've been to Kansas City, and did that for a while. And one of the locations I worked at was in Minneapolis. And when I was in Minneapolis, I fell in love with this concept called Leanne Chin Carryout Cuisine. So, and it was just wonderful food, cooked to order. It's kind of like a Panda Express. And, we all get lessons in entrepreneurship. So, raised some money, didn't have any money, raised some money, opened up the first one in Clayton, Missouri, St. Louis Metro, and opened it up, and we did okay. We dealt with a lot of city issues. They wouldn't let us deliver, and so we really weren't making very much money. And so Shanghai Charlie's was one that you put in the negative column for earnings, but I definitely call it my master's degree because I got to learn how to design, construction, purchasing, all the, standardizing everything so you could execute and keep things rolling the right way. So I still make good Chinese food. I just want to say that. So.
That is very neat. You mentioned that you all had to raise money for that first endeavor. Can you talk about some of the things that you did, some of the strategies you used to raise that money? I think there's several people in the audience who are trying to raise some money right now.
Well, Marlon's here. He's got bags of money with him. Thank you, Intrust Bank, for being the sponsor. And Charlie was here, too. I didn't see if he was okay. It's restaurants are kind of interesting because it's just a fun environment that people are passionate about. And, do you want to buy stock in British Petroleum, and watch that happen? Or do you want to go be part of a restaurant that has a chance for great success? And raising the money, which I always thought was the most difficult component before I started doing it, was actually the easiest.
Why do you say that?
It's exciting. It's fun. It's people
exciting
buy
and fun.
stock and they watch it go up and they watch it go down, but you get to enjoy and see. And when we did our first steakhouse, I remember my partner going, "You mean I can come out here and eat for free?" Yeah, Bill, that's how it works. So.
Gotcha. So the steakhouse came later. Take us back to where you got your master's degree.
Well, the master's degree was definitely Shanghai. It was called Shanghai Charlie's, and it was set up exactly like Panda Express, except they're a lot smarter. They put their restaurants in good locations, and I didn't. And so.
What was wrong with your location?
We were downtown Clayton. Now it's a huge, great restaurant area. And the city would not let us deliver. That was a big part of our business plan, and we still went forward. Really smart move there. And we would do incredible lunches, and everything was cooked to order. I'm really big into food credibility. Whether you were at our timber lines, you get to see food being prepared there, or at Freddy's, where you get to see food being cooked and custard being made. We did the same thing, and it worked great. And if we would have been in a different location, probably have 1,000 of those now, but, missed the location.
And that's difficult because can you share with us what the location is like right now?
It's a very hot, exciting area with a lot of restaurants.
Yeah.
So the city changed a little bit, and it's probably one of the hottest areas in St. Louis Metro.
So not only location, but timing.
Timing, absolutely.
That's hard. How do you decipher when's a good time?
You roll dice, and I'm kidding. I think when you look at the different components of success for restaurants, you've got to have a concept.
Yep.
You've got to be able to manage it. You've got to have enough money. That's the number one reason people fail. And then that last component of location.
Location.
Yes.
How many Top Chef viewers do we have in the house? From Bravo, Top Chef, do you guys remember Restaurant Wars? Imagine, okay, we have someone who's actually designed the concept, who has built a restaurant, and that expertise that comes with that. That's entertainment to watch, but actually to live and do. Were there any moments where you questioned, is this what you were supposed to do as you were setting up your business?
As far as
you were setting up your business, where the passion can carry you so
Yes.
far, but
Yes.
the reality of the grind in
Well,
those
I think the
moments.
reality of understanding how hard you're going to work, what each day is going to look like. You do what you have to do no matter what.
Yeah.
When you're opening a restaurant, the rule that we have, and there's some people from Freddy's here tonight, is that you do whatever you can do today. You don't put anything off till tomorrow. And sometimes those turn into real long days. But when you're in the process of opening a business, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you have to be on top of it.
That's right. So you all ended up having to close because of those factors you explained to us before. What was your next step? What was your next move?
Well, so let's be an optimist. And so what happened, all of a sudden I had started a restaurant. I had designed it and menu and costings and all the components of that. So it actually helped me leapfrog to a regional position, to a restaurant company in Washington, D.C. called the American Cafe Restaurants. And it was owned by a parent company, was W.R. Grace. And when I moved there, we had 7 restaurants. And the first year we opened 7 more, I was in my car all the time with, the phones were actually attached to the cars back then. Anybody know that? Dial a phone, you'll see. So.
Well, right there. So that was some kind of failure.
No, that was it was fun. That restaurant company was great, and we, especially driving around Metro DC is a wonderful area, and living there you learn a lot and get to meet a lot of very unique people.
Yeah. So again, you raised money, had a concept, didn't work out, it closed. Instead, you were able to take, again, what some could deem a failure, some disappointment, and translate that into another opportunity to apply what you've learned through those scenarios. Would that be kind of true?
That's true. So if I took the money that I lost in Shanghai Charlie's, and if I had to go get a master's degree for like $100,000, I did okay. It was a good deal. So I recommend it. Open something, let it fail, you'll succeed. That's how it works.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for sharing the next steps. You mentioned being on the road a lot. What was that like for you?
Well, in D.C. it wasn't bad because I was basically home every night of the metro area, but it does wear you out when you travel. If anybody's ever done a location tour, trying to find a location in like Houston, Texas is crazy. They're 2 hours away, every location. So it's pretty tiring, and it's a big decision.
Right. What did you learn about your entrepreneurial skills, your mindset during this time as you were enjoying that next step of your journey?
You know, I think it's really understanding the impact of everybody that you work with, all the team members, and
the team.
It is so much more important than anything else that can happen. You know, you can miss 1 or 2 things, but if you miss the team, you're toast.
Talk about developing your team. I mean, you weren't just developing them for one location. You had a lot of locations to cover.
Well, and you're talking back to American Cafe time? Yeah, so we were definitely developing teams to open restaurants and move forward. So you have to really put the energy in to know your team, know the staff, and give them the resources needed to do it the right way.
So even though you weren't bound to one location, again, you made it a point to know your team, know your staff. You weren't too big for that.
Absolutely not. Yeah, it's actually, so one of the stories, which is funny, the most productive I've ever been with American Cafe was my assistant called every restaurant one day and said, "Is Scott there yet?" And so everybody gets ready, and they're, "Oh, Scott's coming? Yeah, I think so. Okay, great." I played golf that day. Okay, so.
That's great. That's the life. Some perks. Well, how did you end up meeting the Simons?
So I moved to Wichita in 1990. Some things were happening with American Cafe that I didn't agree with. So I called a friend of mine who had recently changed jobs, and he lived in Wichita, Kansas.
Oh, Wichita.
And so talked to him for a while, and he said, "Oh, by the way, we're looking for someone to help run a company." And the company was Latour, which is Olive Tree, Chelsea's, Piccadilly. We did B&I, business and institutional. We did Wesley and St. Francis cafeterias and collegiate school, independent school, Wolf Creek Nuclear Operating Facility. That was really cool, actually. And just kind of worked through that. And then that entrepreneurship bug hit me again. And we started our steakhouses. And Bill was the 3rd person, a good friend of mine, Barry Schwann, introduced me to Bill.
Oh, we know Barry.
Yeah.
I know Barry.
Who doesn't know Barry in Wichita, Kansas? And so Bill was the 3rd person that was going to invest. A couple other people were involved, and they ended up getting transferred. One guy got transferred to Poland. That was a little bit too long distance with Pizza Hut. Really? And so Bill had been part of a Rent Center group, and they had just sold out, and he was ready to give something a try. So, Bill was a CPA by trade and a very, very dear friend, and so I met with him, and we raised the money, and it really did take about 3 days to raise money to do the first Timberline out west. which is amazing, right? When you sit there as an entrepreneur and you think, what are really my challenges? Man, I need all this money. If you've got the right idea and you're the person with the most to gain and the most to lose, you're gonna be able to raise the funds.
That's incredible right there. That is very incredible. Let me back up just a second and ask you what your first impression of Wichita was.
So we're on the road. My wife's from Kansas City, was born in New York, and I'm a St. Louis kid. So we come out here to interview, and it was 107 degrees, and a steeple had blown off a church that year. So question my judgment. Once again, we moved here. And it was absolutely, we were going to live here for 2 years, and that's it. And we just absolutely, we love Wichita. It's home. Somebody says, hey, when are you going to retire? Where are you going to move? I said, I'm always going to have a home in Wichita, Kansas. People are friendly, genuine values, no games. It's an amazing town, so we love it.
You were surrounded by people as well in terms of an entrepreneur to be able to help fund the next version of your dream in 3 days.
Yeah, amazing, right?
That's incredible. What do you attribute to that?
Alcohol? No, wait, that's a different thing.
Barry.
Sorry, different topic. And you have to drink Budweiser products. Thanks, Barry. Barry owes me $1 now. I think it's just in Wichita, when you look at everything that's happened in this town, when you look at aircraft, you look at Rent-A-Center, you look at Pizza Hut, you look at Taco Tico, Coke Industries, everybody has that attitude of entrepreneurship. They understand risk, and they also understand reward and get to live with the rewards. And for that reason, I think it's very, I'm not going to say easy, but you've got to have your act together. But if someone would walk in my office today with the right business plan and say, here's what I want to do, and if I thought it made sense, I play. It makes sense.
Good old Wichita. So 3 days, you have the money. What was your next move?
So we actually started, all the construction started, and our developer was wonderful, and got to watch it go up. I still had my day job running Latour, and we built the restaurant and came up with, so we had come design and menu and purchasing and what steaks are we going to use. And, we really philosophically never want to compromise on quality. That's really important. And watched it go up, and then we did our opening. And my partner kind of invited a few too many people to the practice day. I call that a Mack truck shift. You feel like you've been hit by a Mack truck. We fed 700 guests that night.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
And with a new crew, with no other crew to draw on from training, right? But other people I'd work with. And then
you guys do take risks.
it was fun. Actually, so talk about, it's all networking. That's why everybody's here tonight. And after that shift, as I was standing outside the back door, I made a phone call to a friend of mine who had just sold his restaurant. And he was in the kitchen the next day helping out. That was wonderful. Richard Waite. And we just took off. And really, you know what? We were so blessed. It was fortunate. Everybody goes, why are you building a restaurant out west? And look at it now. Look at West Wichita now. It's unbelievable. And we were very successful. The Warren Theater was a big plus. And really saw great success from the beginning.
That's really interesting. You brought up two things, and you were talking a little fast, but I don't want people to miss it.
I always do that.
I know. I do it too when we get excited, so we're excited tonight. You mentioned that you still had your day job as you all were building this restaurant in West Wichita, which questioned the location again, which you have been questioned about before. But there are so many who may be juggling that full-time gig, working on the dream. And you were doing that again, constructing a restaurant. Can you talk about what that balance was like?
Well, it wasn't for a very long time. It was like a 60-day window, but definitely was a position where you're understanding this could be your future. And I always look at different ventures, and I look at the upside and the downside of everything you try, and it's really really interesting. If you win, if you open a business and it makes money, you win, right? If you open up a business and you lose money, let's call back to my Shanghai Charlie's days. Yeah, I lost money and everything, but I learned more from that than I probably would have if it would have been moderately successful. And I think the worst position you can ever be in a business is break even.
Hey, that's safe.
Yeah. What's that?
Break even is safe.
It's
though,
not
right?
safe because you're not making money and you're not building, you're not growing. It's not something that's going to develop your future to be wonderful, but it's tough to make the decision to leave it.
That's right. That's powerful. Thank you for explaining that. So, break even.
Break even. Break even. No good. No
good.
This guy went up there and said, break even, and you're better off losing money than breaking even. What is wrong with this guy?
That's something. Again, that goes back to that mindset, though, that mindset of success. Success isn't always safe, right? All right, so the restaurant opened. You had a grand opening that was a real big hit. What were those next few days like?
Well, I had the stomach flu, And so it was a lot of fun because I thought, entrepreneur, you're sitting here, I've got 2 little kids, a mortgage, and I thought my whole life was going into this restaurant. I still think it is every time we open one. But I didn't really have a choice. I was there every day, and so I cut down to 12-hour shifts from 14, and had Sprite and saltines in the office. That was wonderful, but well worth it, and it's a great story now, I guess. But it wasn't fun at the time.
I bet not. So the culture begins to take shape, hiring people. Discuss, because we hear this all the time. How did you find your people? What did you look for in that team?
Yeah, the good thing was that the people that worked even at the steakhouses in Freddy's today, some of them I've known for a long time. And we're very big believers in sharing. And when you share, so here's an interesting statistic with Freddy's. So in the restaurant industry, typically it's 50% turnover for managers every year. And in the 14 years Freddy's has been around, we've never had a GM leave on their own accord. And we do some very aggressive bonus programs, and it's fun to watch people become more successful and buy nicer cars, buy bigger houses, get married, have kids. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing to watch.
That is something to watch. As much as you all put into your staff, you also mentioned putting things into your product, that value. Describe what the Freddy's value is.
You know, family, we're a family, and we even call our conference that we do every 18 months, we call it a family reunion.
Oh my gosh.
And it really, truly is that. And even the suppliers that come to that, they go, oh, this is so interesting. You know, we want to go to this one. We don't want to go to the other events that are out there all year long. You guys just do it right. And it's really a relationship. A couple franchisees are here tonight. And if they had an issue, they walk in, we talk about it, we work it out. But we all know, in a restaurant, if you have a problem at a table in a restaurant, you err on the side of the guest. And with franchisees, I like to say we err on the side of the franchisee. They're more important. That's who we work for. So.
But did you all start with the idea that it was going to be a franchise?
No, we started, everybody comes up and goes, oh, you knew you were going to build a lot of Freddy's. Not true. We really, it started with Randy coming in one day saying, let's do custard. I go to Lake of the Ozarks. I love custard. There's no frozen custard in Wichita. And then it took off from there, and the ideas kept flowing, and we built the first one, and a building became available, and I had a tool belt on and was doing a lot of things in that one. It's a lot different than it is today. And we opened it up with moderate success. And I didn't understand the drive-through component. In all the different restaurants I've worked at, you got to order from a little speaker box, then you got to give somebody the food over here. I didn't quite get that. So I took my car in the drive-through, and I turned it around, and I put, drive-through opens tomorrow. And I did that for 2 weeks. So it's kind of like the free beer tomorrow thing. Yeah, it worked well.
That is something else. How did you all pick what was going to go on the menu?
You know, we do taste testing, and it's interesting. We don't buy by brand, we buy by flavor. And everything had to be the right quality, and we've tested steak burgers, and one of our fun stories is my wife calls it the summer of the hot dog. And so we're trying to figure out which hot dog to use. It's a big decision, even with one restaurant. And we had the steakhouses at the time, so we asked suppliers, we said, hey, we need samples. So they don't give you 1 pound of hot dogs. They give you 10-pound cases. So I had 100 pounds of hot dogs at my house, and we did a taste test. We narrowed it down to 3, and then we did another taste test with a larger group, and picked out Vienna beef, which is a wonderful brand. The funny thing about it, my older daughter, who's married to Camden, she went to work for Vienna beef in the summer internship and just loves hot dogs. But think about, you're a little kid, and we have 100 pounds of hot dogs in our freezer, so guess what you get to eat for a lot of meals? My younger daughter comes upstairs one time, and she goes, Mom, no more hot dogs. So it is fun, but we do like to try, like yesterday in our office, we had a jalapeno fry sauce tasting, and we also had a brownie tasting. And nobody here volunteered, or we would have had you there for that one. But it's great. We're really trying to get the best product we can every time.
Absolutely. So how does that company philosophy of getting the best product for the value, how does that impact your pricing strategy?
You know, we don't believe in discounting very often. We do discounted custard for Freddy's birthday. He's 92. And so we get 92 cents. We're hoping he'll make it to 100 so we can get $1. That's what we're working on that. We keep going. We give him vitamins every day. But really, you know, when a guest goes into, I hope nobody here works at Dillard's, but I'm going to use that as an example because we're filming. Great. And But when you go to Dillard's, every other week, everything's on sale, right? And it takes the value of a product down to nothing, in my opinion. And you'll never pay full price there. So we want to give the best value we can give every day. And when you go into Freddy's, that's what we are. We're, $7.49 for double cheese fries and a drink. And we're going to make it to order. We're going to serve it hot and fresh. And your fries are going to be crispy and hot and seasoned correctly. And the drive-thrus are open until 10 tonight. And so,
all throughout.
It does make a difference. So.
Absolutely. So obviously you played such a major role in building this and helping it grow as well with the network that surrounds you. How did you find yourself spending your days? What were they like? Describe to us what a day in the life of is like.
Well, in the beginning, it was a lot different. In the beginning, you go to the restaurants in the morning, make sure you're set up, and a new restaurant, you're really in a honeymoon period, and you're at first impressions for a 90-day window at a minimum. So you live there, and you make sure it's right. We have teams now that go around the country that do that, and it does make a big difference. We have to open right. We want to open up our Freddy's like if a guest walks in, like we've been open for 6 months. We want to feel that. We don't want someone to go in and go, well, this wasn't right, and this wasn't right. Oh, it's a new day, so they're going to give us a break. We don't want that. We want to do it right from the beginning.
Yeah. What is it like looking at the franchise now, the whole operation, and seeing what it is like today?
Well, it's a lot different. I mean, now we had the first 3 years of Freddy's, we opened 5 restaurants. And we had a Tuesday a few months ago, we opened 5 restaurants in a day. So that's huge. And the other difference in the franchise world, which never really was that accustomed to it prior to Freddy's, but at Timberline or in our own businesses, we go in and we make a decision, we do something. So we're the driver of the bus. As a franchisor, we're here to support our franchisees, but franchisees are making the decision, so we're in the third row in the bus. So we don't get to drive it and and help with decisions all the time, but we try and get people to understand the values of the brand and what makes our brand very special.
There is a closeness about you all. You mentioned that relationship between you guys and your franchisee owners and operators. What do you all look for to give a yes to someone who says, hey, I want to buy into the brand?
Well, it's always fun. Mark has a good story today, but we won't tell that one, Mark. Our person in charge of franchising is here. So it's really quite interesting. Someone has to have, let's go with the easy thing, they have to have the money to be able to do what they say they're going to do. They have to have the operational expertise or the ability to get the operational expertise. They have to figure out a location or a market that's going to work, and we're all going to say, that's a good market to build Freddy's. And lastly, and most importantly by far, we call it the no jerk rule.
No jerk.
And we're very fortunate. We have, we'll bring a franchisee in, we'll have a discovery day, and we'll do dinner in a nice restaurant, and everybody loosens up a little bit. You get to see how do they treat the servers, how do they treat everybody else, interactions, and then the next day everybody in the office meets with, like on a 30-minute window, gets to understand marketing, construction, purchasing, all the components. And at the end of the day, we all sit around and go, yes, this person would fit our family. And I say family on purpose, or no thank you. And we have had times where people come in and they can have a lot of bags of money from Intrust Bank, but it doesn't matter. If they don't fit our profile of what we really like for the family, we don't want them. It's not all about money. We'd rather think long term.
That's really important. That spirit of discernment about who you bring into the brand, that is so incredibly important. So were there opportunities or were there instances where you all failed?
Just a couple, but it's been some franchisees that have shifted, but I think we have 56 franchise groups, and I'm probably wrong. There's probably a couple that, 57, thanks Mark. That's why Mark comes to these things. He corrects me whenever I usually he kicks me under the table, too far away. We have had a couple, but it is important to understand that and try and get people on the right page.
Mm-hmm. In those was it about 2 or so, a couple? Mm-hmm. In those instances, what were the themes? What were some of the reasons why they didn't work?
Greed, I would say, is on one of them. Thinking, varying from brand standards, trying to do something that really didn't make sense or change something and think, it's funny. We went to a franchise conference, Mark and I did, a long time ago, and somebody comes in and we'll call it drink the Kool-Aid of being a Freddy's franchisee. Here's how we do it, here's why we do it, and here's why it works. And then as soon as they sign the franchise agreement, they want to make a couple changes. Yeah. And our role, and really we have a wonderful franchisee group, and just do the first couple of them together, do them the way we do it, follow everything we do, and on the third one, if you have a better idea, we are wide open to listen to it, and we'll even try it if it makes sense. And we have. Some of our better ideas, two menu ideas, and changing our branding and logo, were franchisee driven. And they're wonderful decisions. We appreciate that. We welcome that input.
Absolutely. So that was an example of one instance. What was the category for another instance? Was it timing?
Where we didn't like the franchisee, that one?
Oh, I don't know.
I
I
which
didn't know
were you
about
talking
that one.
Oh, you're going back to restaurants timing. No, okay, I'm going to go that one. I like that one.
Now we want to know that.
Well, it's funny. Gary Oborny, where are you? Gary goes, we're always going to get some dirt out of Scott. I don't know what it's going to be, but no, I think it's more location than timing.
Okay.
When
back
things
to
don't work.
location again?
Yeah, I'm going back to location.
Absolutely. Wow. All right. Your menu has stayed pretty consistent, though, despite the hot dogs made it on. That was successful. Why stay so traditional? Why stay to that menu?
Do what you do and do it well and go home. And so the more items you try and execute, the harder it's going to be. Every time you add an item, even though it's as simple as dropping something different in a fryer or putting something different on a grill, it complicates things. So we had a franchisee within the office one day, and he came in and said, Scott, I want to put salads on the menu. And I go, okay, just a minute, I'll be right back. So I ran to the storage room and I grabbed like 25 pens. And I walked back in the room he was standing in, and I threw a pen to him. He caught it, looked at me like I was crazy. He threw it back. I threw the pen to him again. He caught it, threw it back to me. And then I took all 25 pens and I threw them at him. And he dropped them all. And that's really what it's all about. When you're doing a limited menu, you're able to focus on everyone and serve fresh, hot fries. And burgers that, when someone takes a bite of a Freddy's burger and steam comes out and a smile happens, if I add 10 more items to the menu, we're going to be challenged. We can't do that. We can't execute at the right level.
I love that illustration. Our very first startup grind, we talked with Jeff Turner, and he talked about breaking pencils. Now we have a pen store to go with that. Very neat. Well, again, this is Startup Grind. You guys, I hope that you have been tweeting in your questions, because it's almost time for me to turn the mic over so that we can hear questions from you all. But with that grind part, as you look over all of your experiences, what have been some of the most telling lessons that you have learned from the grind?
Failure is part of entrepreneurship. As much as we all don't like to admit it or believe it's part of what happens, I've tried, I think I added it up the other day, I've been involved in developing 17 concepts. And of those 17, there's 3 of them that have not worked, and it's expensive when they don't work. And it's just important to understand that. And when you're sitting here trying to decide, I've got my day job, and am I going to become an entrepreneur? Am I going to do this or not? The worst thing you can do is 10 years from now going, I should have done that. So, if you're thinking about doing something, my advice is always go for it. Make sure you have your ducks in a row. If it's whatever kind of business it is, learn the lesson, find out who the best is, maybe go work for that company for a couple of years, and then go back and do it on your own. And let's say that company hits a grand slam and you get a double, it's still a good thing. Our steakhouses, which was my first significant entrepreneurship, Outback was cranking at the time. I looked at Outback as a grand slam, and we walked in thinking if we could hit a double, we'd do just fine, and we kind of did. So it worked out well. So.
That's wonderful. All throughout, you've talked about the importance of family as well. Yours, as well as the team, as well as the franchisors. Can you give speak a word of encouragement to those about the team that they place around them, family, friends, supporter? How important is that team that entrepreneurs place around them?
There's nothing more important than that, and the concept and everything can be questionable, but if you don't have the right team you're working with and people you enjoy going out and having a beer with at the end of the day and understanding you can disagree and still have a conversation, that really have the passion for what you're doing, I don't care what it is, it could be pet food, but you've got to be passionate to be the best, and you want the team around you to be passionate about that brand, and that passion conversation occurs a lot in our restaurants. And if we get a potential franchisee that we don't think is passionate about our brand, sorry.
A couple of more things about that family as well. You lost a very, very important team member in the death of one of the founders. Can you talk about what that time was like, going through that loss and building from that loss as well, that legacy now?
Yeah, it's a tough question. I mean, Bill was a very dear friend of mine for over 20 years, and he was my first real business partner in a significant venture, and I was one of 4 people that spoke at his rosary, and just somebody that we missed, and I still look down the hall in his office and wish I could go chat with him again.
Absolutely. That legacy, it just exists. It's just there. And every time you walk into a Freddy, so much hard work has been done to be able to envelop people into the culture that you all have created. My final question before I turn it over is, what does Wichita mean to Freddy's, and what does Freddy's mean to Wichita?
Well, you know, it's when you come to Wichita, somebody like me that's lived in, this is a small city for me, and most people go, this is a big city, and when you move here and you get that attitude of entrepreneurship, and it's really quite interesting. And, you know, I don't think in another town this ever would have happened. It's the attitude of, let's give it a try, and I think Wichita has that, let's go for it. There's a reason, the gentleman I was talking to earlier has 4 entrepreneurship buttons on his shirt. I'll bet he has a tattoo that says, I'm an entrepreneur. And that attitude and understanding that you can do that in Wichita, Kansas, and it makes sense, and the values and everything are here to make it work, I think that's what it's all about. And it's also the other way around. Freddy's in Wichita. It wouldn't have happened anywhere else, and it's a wonderful thing.
Thank you so much. Can we give them a hand? Thank you.
We actually had a few questions coming from the crowd. Question 1, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs who are trying to turn a local business to a national business?
First, take a deep breath. You know, it's really a matter of having the systems in place. You know, understanding, does it have legs? So at the beginning of Freddy's, we didn't know whether Freddy's had legs to do more than 2. We opened the first one west, we opened the second one on Rock Road. And when you look at that and you try and figure out, will it work in other cities? Is there something, who are your competitors? Does it make sense financially? Am I making a reasonable profit? Is it expandable? Is it something that we can really do again and do it well? That would be the number one thing. And then when you're doing it, the number one reason people go out of business is not enough money, raise enough money to do it right and do it right.
How does someone not grow arrogant in the face of success?
You can just go in a restaurant with me, we'll climb underneath the garbage disposal and make sure it's working right. You know, our industry is very humbling, but it's still, it's hard work. And I think the main thing is to appreciate everybody that you work with. And to go in there and you look at like the guys and gals that are working the grill on a Saturday lunch when we're feeding, you know, 600 guests in 2 hours. I mean, they're working hard and appreciating them and supporting them and really understanding that. And if you ever get to where you think you're going to be a little arrogant or have an issue like that, go work grill on a Saturday lunch. That'll fix that pretty quickly.
So what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out?
You know, understanding what you're trying to do, if you have a concept that you have in mind. So when I decided I wanted to be in the restaurant business, actually in high school I thought I wanted to be a lawyer or an accountant. And I have a hard time even thinking about that now. It's just crazy. I would be bored to death. I'm not a person who likes to sit down at a desk all day. Understand what you want to do and then go work for a company that does it better than anybody else. So when I was in college, I got my degree and I went to work for Gilbert Robinson, and I felt they were the best restaurant company in the country. Best training company in the country. They trained managers better than anyone else. And I turned down a couple other jobs. Back then it was, my starting salary was $12,800. Yeah, baby. And just learn from the best and then go emulate it, repeat it.
Time for a couple questions from the crowd. If you have one, I can bring the mic to you. So raise your hand, I'll bring it over.
So what happens when you do see a new concept that you want to pursue, but you don't want to grab 25 pencils out of the air at the same time? Let's say the salad thing looked like a really good thing. How do you pursue that or add that to the mix, or what do you do with it?
Great question. So we test a lot of things. I mean, it's amazing. At the beginning we were talking about the major things, right? And now we test things, even testing as crazy as in our new restrooms. We tested toilets. That's a funny story. We tested, we saw videos in our construction committee meeting. And we test, you know, hand sinks, what works best there. But even spatulas and salads, we'll take it to a restaurant and test it. So right now we have digital boards everywhere. We tested that first. We're testing a new series of digital boards coming out, actually started today. So if you go to Plazio, 13th to Greenwich, we have different menu boards there than we do at Rock Road right now. So we absolutely test. We want to see the impact of things. We've added some menu items that we've tested in certain markets to see what happens. Pickles was a test. Now it's on every menu. We're testing cheese curds in Iowa, Minnesota, Georgia, and Arizona. And they're great. Fried cheese, what could be better, right? And so we absolutely put the time and energy into testing to make sure it's going to be a long-term thing. A decision today for 256 restaurants, 57, I don't know, would be really a bad decision. if it wasn't right, if we didn't put that time and energy into it? Great question. Thank you.
Question to your left.
When you're in the food industry or the restaurant industry, especially a highly competitive field, how do you stay on top of your game? And how do you try to beat the other competition?
You know, it's interesting. We travel a lot. We like to see what everybody's doing. We try a lot of different foods, even foods that don't apply to our concept. But I'm involved in a couple boards, the Kansas Restaurant and Hospitality Association, also on the board of the National Restaurant Association. So when different things were occurring, the networking component of asking someone who's smarter than me, you know, hey, this is happening, what do we do? Or we're having a challenge here. And I think there's the operational changes that have occurred. Government regulation has changed from 15 years ago to today. And understanding that and figuring out what the best practices are going to be. And still going out and seeing food. We still, if I go to a town and there's a burger place I haven't been to, I walk right in and order 5 or 6 things, take one bite of each and leave. And people look at you crazy, but I like to see. Maybe there's something we're missing. Who knows, right? So we try a lot.
Another question to your left.
Hi, I'm Amani from Camp Destination Innovation, and I was wondering, could you give us some words of encouragement since you started so young at 15?
Well, the first thing you want to do is have a parent that's out of a job for about 3 years in high school. That's a good motivation, right? And because that does tell you that wait, I don't want to be in this avenue. You know, you really have to just go for it sometimes. It's figuring out what you want to do, figuring out what the best path is for it. Don't rush it. Don't open something before you're ready, because you want the chance of success. There's a statistic, 96% of businesses that open today will be out of business in 10 years. Think about that for a minute, right? So we know the risk is there, so you got to make sure it's right, and you got to put the time and energy and really develop the right business plan. Make sure you're not underfunding. You know, oh, I'll open up tomorrow and we're going to make money from day one. That doesn't always work. So have the capital and have the and ask people a lot smarter than you a lot of questions, because they're out there and they're great to talk to, and they love helping people. So.
Question here in the middle.
Thank you. So do you see yourself continuing to grow Freddy's, or do you have a next great idea in your back pocket?
And that's a great question. Next question. You know, I always have a couple things I'm talking to or helping people with, but, you know, right now the focus is clearly Freddy's. We opened 59 restaurants last year. We're going to open 70-ish this year. And just being there, really, my role has changed to supporting people in our office when they need help. We have a great team, and it's pretty rare, but that's what it's all about now. So.
And the final question that came in on Twitter quite a bit was, we're downtown. When is the Freddy's going to come downtown?
Well, I'm going to put up my PowerPoint presentation real quick here and the title is going to be Basic Business Model, okay? And do you want, so if you could open a business, let's all take our time on this one. If you could open a business that would be busy Monday through Friday at lunch only, slower on weekends, and very minimal dinner, or would you like a location that's going to be busy 363 days a year? Take your time. It has to make sense. And while we love the downtown, and we get approached a lot, the basic business model is not there. And I like to choose our philanthropy projects. I like to donate money where it makes sense. And we don't like them to be our businesses.
I do have to ask, what color of socks are you wearing right now?
Okay, thank you for asking. These were a birthday present from my wife. These are steak burger socks. Okay? All right? Like that? So, very special just for today. Thanks.
And I'll ask the question that we ask at 1 Million Cups quite a bit. What can we as a Wichita community do to help Freddy's Frozen Custard?
You're hired, by the way. Marketing, maybe? I don't know. It's interesting. We get a lot of support from Wichita. The community, the leaders, the elected officials, everybody here really is so pro-business, and it's a model that should be emulated in different parts of the country, because we don't get that everywhere. To give you an example, I was in Chicago 2 days ago, and one of the suburbs of Chicago that would love to have a Freddy's, we went to their board meeting, and they approved it hands down and said, thanks for coming in. And later that day, we were at another location in another suburb. And they don't want to let us put on, this is in a new market, nobody knows who Freddy's is out down there in Chicago, and they wouldn't let us put our red and white awnings on. They don't want to let us put our gooseneck lamps on. They're going to minimize our signage so nobody can find you, and we sent them a letter today and canceled our contract. So Wichita is very business friendly. We should all appreciate that. So make sure, those of you who are entrepreneurs, when you think about where you're going to do something, make sure you understand the rules and regulations in different communities, because sometimes they will absolutely cost you a fortune with in a lot of ways.
Let's give Scott a round of applause. And as a thank you from the Startup Ground community, from one fellow entrepreneur that also is a restaurateur, Andrew Goff with Redler Coffee Roasters, here's a token of appreciation for you.